In this lecture, we would like to discuss another pioneer of historical school of jurisprudence, Sir Henry Maine, who was considered as a social Darwinist. So, Sir Henry Maine, who set the stage for anthropologists and sociologists like Durkheim, Morgan, Sorokin, Zimmerman, and Max Weber, who reconstructed their typologies of society on the approach and method of Sir Henry Maine. Man's description of early, primitive, and modern societies as status and contract finds corresponding equivalent typologies in Durkheim as mechanical and organic, in Morgan societies and civilized, and in Sorokin and Zimmerman as rural and urban. These varying typologies of society are essentially indicators of historical growth as to how the communities evolved. These theories emerged more or less contemporaneously with the origin of species of 1860, which was developed in the year 1860 by Charles Darwin. Hence, it would not be wrong to label them, all these sociologists, including Sir Henry Maine, as social Darwinists. So, in his growth of early society, Sir Henry Maine, who propounded a general theory of growth and change of society from early period to modern laissez-faire period. The developmental pattern of social institutions, however, showed an almost corresponding direction in all ancient societies belonging to the Hindus, Romans, Anglo-Saxons, Hebrews, etc. So, in particular, he traced that all societies, early societies, were based on pater familias only, living certain primitive communities or primitive societies exclusively matriarchal in nature, and the group of pater familias developed into family group, and group of families led to the growth of gene, and the group of number of genes developed into tribes, and a number of tribes led to the development of commonwealth. So, evolution of society was governed by the law of status and otherwise law of person. So, the aforesaid, historically speaking, according to hypothesis of Sir Henry Maine, the first social organization in the primitive communities was the pater familia, having despotic authority and power over persons. The next social institution was the family group a union of families. The family group was not a mere collection of individuals. The family group was not a mere collection of individuals. It was the family and not the individual that constituted the unit of society. The aggregation of families formed the jinn or house, which in turn led to the formation of tribes. The aggregation of tribes themselves led to commonwealth. In this way, Sir Henry Maine postulated the theory of evolution of society among primitive communities or pre-modern and pre-industrial society with broad generalization that at different stages of evolution, relation between persons were governed by the law of status or what is called as the law of persons on mutual bond and obligation, which regulates relationship between pater familia and other persons. So this is all about the theory of evolution of society as governed by law of status or law of person. So now we'll discuss Henry Maine's static societies and progressive societies. So regarding that, Henry Maine expressed that the evolution of society as based on kinship, there has been a parallel growth of law on a uniform basis also among all the primitive societies up unto a certain stage of their development. Along such communities, legal institutions, according to Sir Henry Maine, show one common single remarkable feature, that is marked by status. The growth of law in such communities united by common blood relationship is more or less uniform. Such is the uniform pattern of the growth of the law up to a certain stage in all the different ancient legal systems, such as the legal systems that he found among the Greeks, Romans, Indians. So, however, differences between them emerged at a subsequent period when the major Western societies perfected new artificial instruments of legal change and reform over the traditional modes, which made them progressive over their counterparts of the Eastern societies, which did not move beyond the traditional methods and hence styled as stationary or static societies. So, when the primitive law has once been embodied in a code, so according to Sir Henry Maine, there was a movement from status to contract. So the Eastern societies remained as static societies, whereas the Western societies, as marched forward, became the progressive societies. So all these would possible due to the development of individual rights, individual personality, and individual freedom, and also due to the contribution of Benthamite doctrine of free consent, so also the contribution of Hobbes' Locke Rousseau's theory of social contract and the growth of commercial and industrial culture in the West, which made development due to the economist or the father of economics, Adam Smith, Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill, so also Kant's notion of free contract, and also the major contributions made towards the development of Western societies from static societies to progressive societies by the French Revolution in 1789 and the American Declaration of Independence in 1776 and the American Civil War in 1861 and the abolition of slavery by the then late President of United States of America, Sir Abraham Lincoln. So these are the development made in regards to movement from status to contract. So the very first fundamental factor that we found, the individual rights, individual personality, and individual freedom and obligation. And the second one that was responsible for the movement of the progressive societies from status to contract is the Benthamite doctrine of free contract. So also the contribution of the social contractualist philosophers like Thomas Hobbes of England, John Locke of England, and Jacques Rousseau of France, who gave a new cult to individual and state personality founded on the notion of free contract or agreement between people and the rulers or among the people. So, the third important contribution regarding the very movement of the Western societies from static societies to progressive societies, the growth of commercial and industrial culture and law of contract. So also the very contributions made towards the growth of commercial and industrial culture by the economists like Adam Smith, Ricardo, Bentham, and John Stuart Mill. So also we found the very contribution of Kant, who made the contribution of the notion of free contract. So also we found the very contribution of the doctrine of liberty, equality, and fraternity developed by the French philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Voltaire of the French Revolution, and the doctrine of inalienable natural rights of man as developed in American Declaration of Independence by John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, which laid the foundation of the very philosophy of laissez-faire in political and legal theories, as laissez-faire was really founded by Adam Smith in economics. So these are the important contribution. And finally, the abolition of slavery under the American Civil War of 1861, which finally abolished by the then late President of United States of America, Sir Abraham Lincoln. So there was the movement from status to contract in all Western societies, which moved from static societies to progressive societies. So, in that context, we would like to discuss the very development of or evolution of law as according to Henry Maine in all static societies or the primitive societies as according to Sir Henry Maine, the themist or the first earliest forms and instrument of law having originated from the Greek Homeric words themes, which means the goddess of justice to be executed by the king, who as a custodian under divine inspiration. So accordingly the themist of ancient Greeks and the dooms of Anglo-Saxon are of this nature. At the very beginning of the evolution of law, then he laid stress on the era of custom, and in that era, the second stage, which led to uniform practices and habit resulting in the growth of customs in the primitive communities. And this was the period when the office of the king or judge was by close oligarchy or priestly class, learned in law and religion. The priestly class preserved the entire customary rules through memory, because the art of writing was not then invented during this said period. Then, according to Maine, the third stage of evolution of law in static society is the era of courts. So, according to Maine, under the third stage, as such, we found the Hebrew code, the Hindu code of Manu, the Roman 12 tables, the codes of Hammurabi, and Assyrians, the Syrian code of Persians. So, a class of lawyers, jurists, and learned men in law appeared who broke the monopoly of the priestly class by codifying the law to make it accessible and easily understandable. So, this was all about the evolution of law in static society up to this third stage. But when in Western countries the society moved towards from status to contract, then in the progressive societies, he mentioned the very evolution of law took the form of legal fictions, equity, and legislation. So, as regarding to legal fiction, so in the progressive societies, according to man, the great instrumentality of legal reform was legal fictions. So he defined legal fictions in a very broad sense. So, to him, as for instance, the Roman fiction that a foreigner was a citizen for the purpose of litigation at hand, or the fictions which permitted adaptation of the ancient Roman legal procedure to the needs of foreign commerce and commerce generally. So, similarly, in English legal fiction, we found that the king is dead. Long live the king has still great historical and legal importance. So, this is the first form of evolution of law in progressive societies in the form of legal fiction. Then he went to the second stage of evolution of law in progressive societies in the form of equity. So, equity in English and Roman legal system therefore came to remove the rigidity of law and to remove injustice, delay, and other inconvenience. So, equity, according to Sir Henry Maine, is a body of rules existing by the side of the original civil law, founded on distinct principles and claiming incidentally to supersede the civil law in virtue of a superior sanctity inherent in those principles. So, the Roman law and the continental system, however, do not make such a clear cut distinction between common law and equity, and the same word is used for justice and law. At best, the Roman law used the expression jus civilly and jus gentium for the English term law and equity, respectively, as it was the second stage of growth and evolution of law in progressive society as propounded by Sir Henry Maine in the evolution of law. And lastly, in the third stage, he mentioned about the importance of evolution of legislation as the final stage of evolution of law in progressive societies or the Western societies, as legislation is the last effective instrumentality of quick social reform. It is perhaps the only method for dealing with new complex problems in a modern state uninhabited by restraint and limitations, except as expressly provided by its fundamental law. The courts and the people have accepted the vast powers of the modern legislature to effect changes and reforms through legislation in a planned and deliberate fashion. So, this is all was mentioned by Sir Henry Maine regarding the evolution of law in progressive Western societies which become progressive, but the Eastern societies remained up to the era of code. So all the Eastern societies were based on status. So there was no movement of from status to contract in all Eastern societies. That's why he termed them as static societies. So only the progressive Western societies, they made a movement from status to contract, and that was made possible by the individual rights, individual personality, and individual freedom, and also by the Benthamite doctrine of free contract and the contribution of the social contract theorists like the English political philosopher Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and the French political philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and also the growth of commercial and industrial culture in the Western countries or the Western societies due to the contribution of economists like Adam Smith, Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill. So also Immanuel Kant's contribution of the notions of free contract led another development regarding the movement from status to contract. So also the very principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity as evolved and developed by the French political philosopher Voltaire and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So also the American Declaration of Independence and those inherent rights developed by James Adams and also by Thomas Jefferson, and finally the American Civil War of 1861 and the abolition of slavery by the then led American President Sir Abraham Lincoln led to the real movement of Western societies from status based societies to progressive societies. And now we'll discuss the reverse movement that we found in our period, movement from contract to status. So, in this present modern society, due to the complexities of capitalism, industrial revolution, the very society is an exploitative nature of the social order, and we found the concentration of wealth and political powers in the hands of few. So now there is a gap in between the have and the have nots, that is between the rich and poor. So due to capitalism, there was a class of proletariat or the working class who were being exploited from their labor, and by that exploitation by the capitalist or the bourgeois, the very social order became exploitative in nature, and among the capitalists and the bourgeois we found a concentration of wealth and political power. So, in society, we found both political, social, and economic inequality and exploitation. So, it led to the birth of evolutionary socialism, and Sir Robert Owen, the English evolutionary socialist, led the foundation of evolutionary socialism in England, which was later on developed by the French philosopher Proudhon in France, who termed property as theft, and later on the French socialist Charles Fourier, and also the English socialist like Sidney Webb and Patrick Webb, they led to the growth and development of evolutionary socialism, and also the Fabianists like John Frederick Lasky and the syndicalists of French, they led to the development of evolutionary socialism, which demanded to bring an egalitarian social order. So, the very importance of egalitarian social order led due to the development of evolutionary socialism, led to the growth and development of scientific socialism under the hand of Sir Frederick Engel and Karl Marx in their work Communist Manifesto, which was published in 1848, and from there the foundation and birth of communism led by Karl Marx, and which was finally established in Union of Soviet Socialist Republic under the Bolshevik Revolution of 1918, by under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, and which carried on for a long period under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, and gradually it spread to Eastern Europe in different countries like Hungary, Yugoslavia, Poland, etc. So at present we found among the workers there is a new form of development of collective bargaining, as because the individual bargaining of the workman or the laborer was lost its importance in the era of capitalism, and due to the concentration of wealth and political power, or an unholy nexus between the businessman and the industrialist and the politician, so individuals' bargaining power lost its importance. So, in due process, now it is collective bargaining. So, that collective bargaining get its strength by labor legislations and formation of trade unions, number of associations and federations by the workers, employees, and also by the professionals like the doctors, teachers, lawyers, etc. So now, as individual lost his individual bargaining power, the very importance of collective bargaining becomes the new arm in the hands of those trade unions, associations, and federations. So, in the present social order, we found the growth of number of trade unions and associations and federations. So, at present, individual lost his importance as regarding the very freedom of right to contract, that individual freedom and the very doctrine of free contract as contributed by Bentham, and the social contract approach of Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, also Kant's notion of free contract has lost its importance in the present social order, which gave into rise of trade unions, associations, and federations such as the Railway Federation and the Industrial Trade Unions and Federations of different working groups of laborers, workers, and also some professional like the teachers, doctors, the lawyers, etc., they form different unions, associations, and federations, so they lost their individual identity. Now it is the union or the association or the federation through which an individual is identified as member of that union, association, and federation. So now it is a revert position from contract to status in this very movement that we found at present social order, as we have critically made an assessment on the theory of Sir Henry Maine, who was considered as a social Darwinist, and according to him, he laid emphasis first on the growth of society from early society to the evolution of society up to the modern period, where he categorized the static societies and progressive societies. So all Eastern societies, according to Sir Henry Maine, are static societies, and while all the Western societies are progressive societies, as because according to Sir Henry Maine, there was a movement from status to contract. So all Eastern societies as static societies, they remained up to the period of the development of the era of courts. But with the movement of static societies in Western societies as through progressive societies, due to the development of legal fictions, equity, and legislation, it made the Western societies as progressive societies, and all those different factors responsible for the progress in modern Western societies that we have discussed. And also we have discussed in detail the movement from contract to status, the reverse, as we found at present society or social order in every society in the world, and the importance of collective bargaining, and also in that context how it was possible due to the contribution of the evolutionary socialists, and why the scientific socialists like Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, and Lenin and Stalin. So we could cite the contribution of Mao Zedong's the Chinese Cultural Revolution. So we have completed our lecture on Sir Henry Maine and his theories of static society and progressive society. So also about his theory relating to movement from status to contract, and also we discuss the present form of social order, where we found there is a movement from contract to status. So we have completed our lecture on Sir Henry Maine's contribution, etc.